I just want to preface this video by saying I have no idea what I'm doing. This is the first YouTube video I've ever made, and this is definitely the first motorcycle video I've ever made. First time I've ever vlogged as well. So I just want to say that all the perspectives in this video are from someone that has just got back into riding after 4 years, and also someone who is riding a bike that is now their second bike. I started riding in 2015 on a 2015 Yamaha R3. I bought it brand new from the dealership, and I rode that for about a year, put 10,000 miles on it, and then sold it. Just wasn't happy with it, and I was really into cars at the time. Since then, I've been through 3 or 4 cars. I've had a Honda S2000, a Nissan 350Z, a Subaru BRZ, a Focus ST, and a supercharged Mustang GT. That was a 2002, in case anyone's curious. And nothing's really kind of scratched the itch that motorcycling scratches for me. So here we are now. I bought this bike about 3 weeks ago. Here's a little thing. Daytonas, specifically this model year, or any year before 2013, are kind of rare. Hard to find. So I'm in Missouri currently. I had to go to Michigan to get a bike. So I took a train there because no one wanted to drive me out to Michigan. It's a 6.5 hour ride back. That was terrible because, again, that was 3 weeks ago, so temperatures ranged from 30 to 50 degrees that day. Not my smartest move. I probably need to adjust this while I'm riding. So I've been on this bike. Actually, this is the second time I've rode it since I got it. So these opinions are all of someone who is basically new to riding again, or at least as new as I can be, especially starting out on 600cc Supersport. I guess I should start with saying, why did I buy a Daytona 675? I've actually rode the majority of 600cc Supersports and a couple liter bikes, which I shouldn't have, but I didn't like the vast majority of the Supersports besides the 600RR. And it's kind of weird because this is sort of the polar opposite, right? This bike has some of the most aggressive ergos of any of the Supersports besides the R6, and even then I think this might be a little bit more aggressive than the R6. But what I liked about the 600 is exactly what I like about this, is that it has torque. And this has a little bit more than the 600, obviously. But the other thing about it is when I buy a car or a bike, I just want something that is interesting and unique and something that is honestly intoxicating to ride. And this has that in spades. This has so much character. The sound is so intoxicating, and it's got plenty of torque. And the majority of riding I do is around town. Besides me going out, like right now, I'm actually making a journey to some back roads. And the back roads that I have aren't going to be anything crazy. And guys, because I just got back into riding, don't expect anything spectacular. Don't expect me to get my knee down and do anything crazy, so I'm just not going to. I'm probably gonna stop the video here and actually cut to when I get to somewhere that is good. My thoughts on this bike compared to that. Well, obviously, there's a lot more torque on this. There's a lot more top end. Besides that, though, the difference is beyond just obviously the better components and everything like that. They start to fall off at that. The engine size. That's pretty much the biggest determining factor of why this feels different from a Yamaha R3 or an Ninja 300. If you had set me on this bike as a beginner I can't say confidently that I would have been fine, because it is different, it is less forgiving, the brakes bite harder, things like that. But in terms of if you were just to set me off and you didn't expect me to brake, you didn't expect me to respond to any sort of emergency situations, I probably would have done okay. I mean, this bike is fairly forgiving. Again, I'm still fairly new to riding, so I'm not going to do anything too crazy on these roads. I'm not getting my knee down. I'm not Yami Noob in his prime. I'm not anyone like that. We'll give you a couple little twisties here at slow speed, because that's about all I'm capable of, to be honest. This bike is more than I can handle, I'll be completely honest. But, you know, when I had my R3, I spent the majority of my time learning the basics of riding, learning how to, you know, pay attention to my driving line, pay attention to what's ahead of me, you know, look where I'm supposed to, or look where I want to go. And so that really helped me prepare for this bike. Now, this bike isn't anything too crazy in terms of power, but it's enough for me for sure. One thing we got to be careful with here is people pulling out and things like that. But there's going to be a couple little straightaways where I can show you what it does. So why did I choose this bike over the R6, the 600RR, or the GSXR 600? Well, actually, I wasn't even really looking at those bikes when I decided to purchase this. I was looking at an FC09 or an FC07 or something like that. The main thing I wanted out of my riding experience was a bike that sounded good, something that was intoxicating. I like vehicles that are intoxicating to drive, and this 3-cylinder definitely has that in spades. The sound is so intoxicating. And then 2, I wanted something that had torque, because to get here, to get to this road that is, it's not even twisties, to get to this section of where I live in Missouri. Sir, why did you do this? I had to drive 15 minutes or so. Most of my time riding is spent in the city. And this little road right here, if I had more gas, if I had more time, I would have went out much further to make this video. This is about it. I have to turn around in this little subdivision right here, because there's not much else going on out there, or the other direction. Out that way is Ferguson, Missouri. Probably shouldn't tell you guys that, but I really don't care. I'm just going to do a quick little turn around right here. Yeah, this bike has hell of torque for a 600. This guy to go in front of me. Aww. We'll hang back for a second. So I guess I should give you the beans just once, right? It wouldn't be fair if I didn't give you guys a little pull on my new bike. So let's go. From second gear. Of course he would do something like that. See, that right there is why I don't do that around here. Except for that little spot back there, and there's a couple other ones, but people just don't know how to. So again, I'm new. This is my second bike. This is my first time being on a bike since 2016, 2017-ish. I'm just not going to do anything crazy. And I apologize for that, or if that upsets anyone. Bumpy there. See, that might be why you wouldn't buy this bike as a beginner. The throttle response is really light, it's really touchy, it's sensitive. And that's a good thing for someone that, you know, is experienced. They're turning there, I think. They don't have a signal light on, but they're turning. And if you chop that throttle a little too hard in first or second gear, because, you know, the tendency with something like this, something with long gearing, is to ride out first and second gear through town. Not in second gear, I'm sure. But in first gear, if you chop that throttle a little too hard, I've actually had this bike come up, well, not unintentionally. I wanted it to, Lily. I knew what I was doing. But if someone didn't know what they were doing, and they unintentionally chop the throttle, well, the results could be fairly bad. Now, this isn't an FC09, this isn't a Z900, which I know a lot of people get stuff like the Z900 and the FC09 as their second bike and third bike, but honestly, I test drove the FC09, and one of the reasons I didn't get it was because it's just too much torque, for me at least. I won't say that it was frightening to be on, but I will say that I just didn't see a purpose in it. One of the things that I like whenever I'm on a motorcycle is I like to wring its neck out. This video is going to have a lot of cuts in it because, again, this is the first time I've ever motovlogged. This is the first time I've ever made a vehicle or a video on a motorcycle. I'm incredibly nervous, not because, you know, I'm out riding and multitasking, no, just because this is sort of embarrassing for me. I don't care what people around me think, to be honest. What I care about is what this video is going to look like when I upload it on YouTube, what my voice is going to sound like. My suggestion for anyone that wants to get into motovlogging, honestly, don't test your setup. Just go out and make a video, because if you test your setup, if I had tested my setup, I guarantee I would have listened to my voice for maybe 5 seconds and that would have been it. I would not have tried to do anything more than that. So that's my advice for that. So here's what happened when I purchased this bike. Daytona 675s, they're actually pretty hard to come by, especially before 2013. You know, not a lot of people know about them, not a lot of people buy them, and there isn't a Triumph dealer around where I live within like 50 square miles, so the support isn't there. When I bought this bike, it was actually pretty much in the dead of winter. We had a couple days on the weekend where it wasn't freezing cold, and that was the day that I chose to go pick up this motorcycle. So where did I find this, you might ask? I found this motorcycle in Kalamazoo, Michigan. I live in, well, around St. Louis, Missouri. Alright, don't wave. So getting the bike was a hurdle. I didn't have anyone that wanted to drive me there, which it's understandable, right? I used to live in Ohio. I had plenty of friends. I don't now. And my girlfriend and pretty much everyone around me was significantly opposed to me getting this bike, to me riding. So I had to take an Amtrak train, which was a 12-hour train ride to Kalamazoo, Michigan. I didn't even know. I had this guy send me like 40 to 50 pictures, 4 different videos, and that was how I determined whether or not I wanted to pick up this bike. I wasn't sure whether this thing, was going to hold up to my expectations, whether this guy was lying about anything mechanically, and luckily he wasn't. This bike has just over 10,000 miles on it. It's a 2008 model, and I purchased it for $4,500, which, if you ask me, is a fantastic deal. There's not a single scratch on this entire bike besides some scuffing that's occurred because of me, where I should have put a tank pad. But other than that, pretty much everything came back to me within, my first ride, which, granted, my first ride was 6.5 hours long. And so that's probably to be expected. But, I feel like once you know how to ride a motorcycle, it really just kind of comes back to you. The only thing that, I was incredibly mindful of my limitations. I knew that I wasn't 100% capable anymore of doing what I used to do on my R3. Again, I rode my R3 for over a year, put over 10,000 miles on it, and I felt like I had some experience under my belt. Glad we got that, because the GoPro's about to die. The rest of this video I'm probably going to take with the bike parked on my phone, somewhere nice looking. And granted, that's pretty hard around here where I live. It does not look nice around here. We'll find a spot, and we'll talk about my final thoughts on this motorcycle. This video has honestly been all over the place, and I apologize for that, but I hope you got something out of it. So we're going to see how much longer this GoPro lasts. I guess I should probably say a few things about the handling of this bike. This bike is super flickable. I don't want to be chased on 2 wheels, but this bike is more flickable than my Yamaha R3 ever was. And you might chalk that up to the suspension components just being that much better, but honestly, chassis design is everything in a motorcycle. The reason that your 250s and 300s are so light or so flickable is primarily just because they're light. Their chassis design isn't anything special. Their suspension components definitely aren't special, but by the sheer fact that it's a light chassis, it's flickable. But this bike brand new was over $10,000. When you have that much research and development into a bike, into a chassis, you're going to turn out something nice, typically. And that's what Triumph did with this. Just like any of the other 600s, they made a nice motorcycle. But one thing that really turned me off, things like the 600RR, the R6, the ZX6R, and the Suzuki GSXR 600. I shouldn't just name them all off, but I have, for you, was how thick they were. I don't like bulky vehicles in general. I certainly didn't like those bikes in the way that they felt to be on. To me, this bike is probably one of the most perfect feeling motorcycles I've ever been on. There's some gravel there. I don't know why. There's no reason for there to be gravel there. trying to put this into neutral. See if I can get it the first time. I did! Just FYI, putting this motorcycle in neutral is a pain in the ass. Alright, so what do we have here? Again, this is a 2008 model. I don't mind showing you my plate because it's temporary. So overall, this bike is in basically perfect condition. The only thing that's done to it, Puig double bubble windscreen, and then we got the stock air exhaust here without a baffle in, which means it sounds pretty damn great. Classic Triumph whistle. Oh, and I guess we have some wonderful stems here, stem caps. Besides that, let's bone stock. Now again, the only thing that's really wrong with it is the fork's leaking some oil. Now, when I went and got this bike inspected, I don't know how true it is. The guy said there's really nothing wrong with it, but it's leaking down onto my caliper here, and I don't really think I'm comfortable with that. So, just FYI, most places, I've got a few quotes, they charge around $300 to rebuild your forks. And if you provide them with things like the springs or just a cartridge kit or something like that, they'll replace those as well. But when a fork rebuild basically just consists of replacing the dust covers, the fork seals themselves, which are right here, and the fluid inside, the oil. And when they do that, a lot of places will actually ask you if you want a custom amount of oil placed into the forks, in case you want to customize the bike to you just a little bit more. But honestly, for most people, unless you're a hardcore track rider, that's not something you're going to do. And if you are a hardcore track rider, you're probably just going to do it yourself. So that's that. 2008 Triumph Daytona 675. My thoughts on it: it's an amazing bike. Compared to any of the other 600s, it's definitely got way more torque. Compared to leader bikes, it has less torque, obviously. Compared to the newer Daytonas, because I have rode a 2013 Daytona 675R. Honestly, I like this bike more. Because I like the look of this bike more. It's got that undertail exhaust. It's got headlights that everyone loves from the earlier Triumphs. Because of that, I purchased this instead. Anyways guys, thanks for watching. This is going to be it for this video. I might give you a couple last impressions of the bike on my phone. But besides that, peace.